Okay, Dickie Joe, are you there? Dickie Joe. Oh, oh, Dickie Joe. Dickie Joe.
There you are, Monette. Hi.
Here I am. I was having technical difficulties and I was like, oh no, did I lose her? Can you see me?
I can see you. You have a beautiful background behind you and
Thank
and
you.
and lovely purple hair. I'm
Thank
jealous.
you.
Absolutely very metaphysical. It's so nice to see you this afternoon.
It is. Now it said recording in process on my side or in progress on my side. Did it say that for you as well?
It did. There was a little button for me to tap whether it was okay or not, and I just did. So we have to
Perfect.
be careful of what we're saying. We're being recorded.
Thank you. Leave it to my
So,
Gemini sister to remind me of the rules of engagement on communication in the internet age. Thank you, Nikki Joe. What a pleasure. I am, like I said, learning all this technology stuff, so forgive me. I was like, what, where is she at? I was on her last 5 minutes trying to get into it. Okay, we have arrived. It's so good to see you.
thank you. Same here. We've been friends a long time.
We really haven't. I'm just going to give a quick, brief history for everyone that will watch this back. Dickie Joe, I met Dickie Joe, gosh, over 20 years ago at a little place called the Metaphysical Circle, which was a small group of locals in the Melbourne, Florida area. And Dickie came into lecture, and Dickie Joe did beautiful lectures and was teaching us about all manner of things. And I also had the pleasure of attending a couple of seances at Dickie Joe's place that was on Beachside, or her mother's place, correct? Was that
That's
correct?
right. Yes, that
Yeah.
was our old family house. And the seance table was my grandmother. She was a spiritualist. So I know that she will be happy in the spirit world, knowing that you remembered the seances and the lovely group over there in Brevard County.
I absolutely did. And I do believe it was a historical house as well, was it not? Was it not?
Yeah, well, it borderline on historical. The table was historic.
Okay.
It was at least 120 years old, and the house was a little bit newer, but it was one of the early beach houses built over in the Canova Beach area.
Okay, okay. Well, I do have a few questions for you, and then first, I would just love for you to tell the audience about what led you to your studies with astrology. I remember you telling us back in the Metaphysician Circle that you had studied under or worked with, adjacent to Edgar Casey, who everyone on my channel definitely knows about as a very powerful and famous psychic that channeled. Didn't he channel via his dreams and sleep a lot too?
He was a sleeping prophet, yes, but he passed into spirit before my time. His organization, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, is in Virginia Beach. And
Okay.
I was one of the psychics that worked with them for several years in the 1990s. They had a program where they would have invite different people in the metaphysical world to respond to questions on tape and then hire them according to how the tapes went. And I was very blessed in that they selected my tape. And
Oh wow.
I went on 4 occasions to work with people at the group in Virginia Beach. And it was a wonderful experience. They have a large metaphysical library and a beautiful meditation room overlooking the ocean, and just a very, very nice experience there. My family was involved in metaphysics going way back. Um, my grandmother was a spiritualist. That was her table that we used. And also, she subscribed to a magazine called American Astrology while I was growing up. And I'd go to visit her. She lived near us, walking home from school to warm up because this was in northern Wisconsin where it was freezing cold. And I would read American Astrology and slowly began to do little horoscopes for my friends. And then also my grandmother's father, that would be my great grandfather, was a famous dowser, and he would go all over Wisconsin and Minnesota with his dowsing rod, a Y-shaped stick. And the story was he could always walk exactly to where to dig a well, which was a very useful skill at that time. This was in the early
Absolutely.
1900s. And so
Got my
that
dowsing rod right here.
Oh, you've got a dowsing rod. Well, that was what he was a dowser. And so that's where the spiritual qualities came from. I really grew up in a spiritualist family and have been involved in the metaphysical world my whole life. So I feel very grateful to have something that I can share during these times of personal and planetary change for everybody.
Well, the thing that comes up too is the method of astrology that you study, and that was a question that I had for you. Whether it's Vedic, natal, is it horary, or is it what's the other one here that I wrote down? Um, Electional. Which one is the
All,
version that you practice?
all of them.
Okay.
Depends on what the person needs. I mostly practice Western astrology in the tropical Placidus form of houses. And in that, I can do a horary chart. Horary is from the Latin word for hour, and
Okay.
that's for doing a horoscope for a question. You had asked me for a time when we could do this interview, and I selected a favorable hour. So hopefully we'll have a good time during the interview. But
I love that.
if someone wants to know, say, if a new business is going to do well, or if they should adopt a certain animal at a certain time, doing a horoscope for the question is a horary hour. And then an electional chart is selecting a favorable time for something, say, like to move or to sign a contract on a home, to start a new job, open a new business, maybe a cafe or a salon. I've worked with that to select a favorable time because everything has a birth date, not just people. Natal chart is from the word nativity, of course, and that's an individual's birth chart. And that shows that's cast for the time, date, and place of birth. And it
Right.
shows all of the potentials someone might have. But yet at the same time, there is free will, Monette. I'm a great believer in free will within limits. We're given certain gifts and abilities, and then hopefully brains to think with any luck. And we can make the best out of what we've come into this lifetime with. That's what astrology is all about. A very famous astrologer named Llewellyn George wrote, the stars impel, but they don't compel. So,
Oh, that's
there
beautiful.
is an element of free will there. I also worked with a very famous astrologer who lived much of her life in Brevard County, but was from England, Sybil Leek. Back in the days before there was computerized astrology, I did all of the setup in longhand for her horoscopes for years, and also did some research work with Sybil. And she passed away, oh goodness, I think it was 1980 or 81. I have the exact year somewhere. It was that time, but I had worked with her for several years in the 1970s before she became ill, and felt very privileged to know somebody like Sybil Leek. If I think you're living in the Brevard County area now, and she is well known in that area.
I'm in, I think, more akin to your area in the Orlando-ish area for sure.
Mm.
However, I was there and I visit mother all the time who is in the Brevard
Okay.
County area.
You do have some
It's so
roots there. Yeah.
yeah, it's so interesting because you talked about our free will, which I think is so important because I do readings, for a living, as you know, and so I can advise a client, but they ultimately always have free will. It doesn't matter what my prediction is or what my guidance says or what my angels tell me to tell them. It is, or my spirit team tells me to tell them, it is absolutely up to them to make the choice to pivot. What I love about astrology, though, and this is such a fire was lit upon our meeting because I am not you at all, but I definitely studied more as you suggested that I should, and I really delved into it. And I do to a light degree, utilize it to help me sometimes when I'm working with clients if they ask. It's part of one of the services that I offer. I am not doing charts the way you would do. I'm in awe at you saying you did longhand charts for Sybil, which is just amazing. So guys watching this back, Dikki Jo, are you still taking clients to do astrology charts?
I do. I just sent a chart off to a client in Wisconsin this morning, in fact. But I have clients all over the country and in several other parts of the world. Japan, India, and Ireland are some places. And I am accepting new clients. I do either an interactive session on Zoom using tarot and astrology, or I do a long written kind of a curated box with the whole horoscope typed out and then responses to personal questions.
Where can they find you if they were interested in soliciting your work?
Well, let's see, I'm on Facebook almost every morning under my name, Dikkijomullen, and you can send a message through me on Facebook, or I have an email, my name, Dikkijomullen, without any dots or spaces, at gmail.com. But you can send a question if you would like, either through Facebook Messenger or through Gmail, requesting information about my services. I also do house blessings to dispel negative spirits or energies from houses, and chakra balancings for people as well.
Dikki Jo is, to me, the epitome of the Geminian sun sign energy, which is not master of all trades, jack of none. It's master of all the things. That's what I learned being around Dikki Jo, is that she does so many things well, and her shining her light in the way that she did gave me permission to not second guess having multiple areas of interest. So thank you. Thank you, Dikki Jo, for showing up in this world and being a real worker of light in that way to me, where it was like, oh, I can do a couple of things. And I may not do all the things Dikki Jo does, but Dikki Jo does all the things. So guys, if you need her, please reach out to her at any of the sites. I'll also have it linked below once I post this and upload this video as well. Any place that you can find her if you're looking to chat with her. But that leads me into when you're talking about the house blessings, utilizing the chart, but also the free will. Because one of the questions I had here was, how does your intuition factor into what you are seeing as the actual reflection of your client's chart? If there's a static aspect there that you're looking at, and it is what it is, like you said, today you selected the right time for us to have the most optimal interview. How would your intuition factor into that if you were working with a client? Not necessarily for us, but how you might work with a client.
Well, intuition is the way we feel, a hunch. And, when you meet someone, there's a saying that the entire relationship, business or personal, is established in the first 15 seconds that you meet somebody. And so there's often, say, a sense of rapport or being drawn to someone, intrigued with them right away, or the other way around. There might be someone that just leaves you cold or even frightened. And it's good to heed that first flash of intuition. I do believe that people have good in them and good potentials, and that we try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. But there are some people that just aren't receptive, or call it chemistry. An astrologer who does well with one client. I like to think everyone in this field that you and I are both in tries to help the people, to do what we can for them. But there's some that we just relate to or have more insight into than we might others. And usually you can feel that right away. If someone just isn't relating well to me, I have no hesitance at all about referring them to another counselor.
I love that you give yourself that liberty,
Oh,
which is self-protection.
Well, it's self-protective, and it's also important for the client. There's sometimes, fortunately, that doesn't happen too often, but sometimes it's just a blank or dead energy. Call it incompatibility with the horoscopes, whatever.
Absolutely.
And so what I will do is just to explain that the feeling isn't there, and I'll suggest maybe a couple of other people that they can contact and speak with and see if they feel a better sense of rapport. I'm very careful about doing that, though, because sometimes it'll scare people. If I don't read for them or say I just can't work with you, they'll think I see death or terrible things, and that's not necessarily it at all. It's just that that's not the right person or the right time. Maybe you've had that happen, say, oh, if you've gone to someone to do alterations for clothes or to have a manicure or something. You might work
Right.
well to one professional and then feel this person just doesn't get me at other times. And that can happen. And it's not meaning that either the person or the counselor is negative. The energies just aren't there. I would say to answer that, just feel how it's going. See what your heart and intuition's telling you. You know, like when we met all those days ago at Maria's circle that she had in her house, remember?
Yeah.
Downtown Melbourne.
Yes, ma'am.
She was lovely. And she still is working, I think, in the beauty field there, but I don't think she has the circle anymore. Anyway, when we met, we felt immediately a sense of rapport and friendship, or I did, and I think you did too.
Yeah,
And,
I
and
absolutely
then
did.
and then some of the people that were there were good people, but you know, I wouldn't say much more than hi, have a nice evening to some of them, you know, and that happens to us all the time. And it's just very important to heed that, especially if you're working with or trying to help people.
Absolutely, it is important. Now, let's have a bit of background for me. I freelanced for many years before I began my own business. I was running it concurrently, but really, before I pivoted to my own business, I freelanced on various psychic lines around the country. And so I had just but a millisecond or three to connect with someone because their money was time, literally. So I didn't have time to really feel into it. I had to sit right with that initial feeling you talked about, which I believe that Malcolm Gladwell writes about in The Tipping Point, that immediate intuition that we have in the first few seconds. It's primal, it's frontal lobe, it's all the things that we feel immediately, that flash of, yes, I recognize you, or I'm comfortable with you, or oh no, I'm retreating. And so that taught me to kind of accelerate how I connected and also be okay with saying, I don't know if we're having the connection because they deserve to have their needs met. And I may not have been the person to meet that. And again, I too didn't use it judiciously, right? Because that can scare people. However, it is needed at times, and also self-protection as well. You brought up a really good point that it's like I said, Miss Dikki Jo is psychic, because my next question literally was, how do you handle sensitive subjects like death or things that you might see in a chart? Because that's one of the things that I get a lot of clients say, I've never had a tarot reading before, and oh no, what if the death card comes out, or what if you see this, and what does that mean? And you and I know that it's incredibly interpretive and all about your intuition, and it's subjective to what else is around in that reading. But how do you, as an astrologer, because you are looking at aspects that are very different to interpretations of any oracle or tarot card, so how do you handle those subject matters when they come up and you can see them in the chart?
Well, the first thing I'll address is death, Monette. First of all, it's very injurious to people to predict death. What I often do if someone wants to know about a death is I'll tell them a little story that is kind of an urban legend in the astrology world. There was an astrologer who foresaw death and predicted it for somebody. And this was a lady, she and her husband were near retirement age. So she went out, they spent all of their money, went on a cruise, had a great time, came back home broke. And she was waiting for death. And then the husband's bowling league dissolved and they had a funeral for it. And that was the death. And then after that, they had to go out and get part-time jobs. This is true, to survive. So there are many different things that can show an ending and a beginning. I really think that death is divine and that we shouldn't predict it as a physical death. Also,
Go
there are
ahead, please.
times that are more difficult than others, and I think that we can do a lot to focus on bringing out the best in them. Say, many people are terrified of losing their jobs that come to me, and sometimes it'll show that there can be, I'll say, be aware there could be some changes at your place of employment. You might be transferred to a different position. It wouldn't hurt to have a resume ready, in case you want to change jobs. But diplomacy is very important because you always want to leave someone with truth, but having a good feeling about the reading.
Yes.
Not that it's
Truth.
all doom and gloom and they're going to be out on the street without a job or without a home or something. But, there's a way to plan in advance and look at different options.
Right. Leave them with truth and hope. That's the best that we can do, because sometimes we are working through arduous situations, especially relationally, right? So I get a lot of love readings in my line of work. And just because something isn't going the way that you may like for it to doesn't mean that there aren't elements of evolution that you're not working through or that their partner isn't, and everything isn't a dead end, specifically when those cards come up or when that aspect may pop up in a chart. So for those of you listening, I hope that assuages some of the fears you might have about having someone who is as focused and as good at what she does, like Miss Dikkijomullen, looking at your chart and seeing something that she knows how to communicate it with you, but also how to give you perspective. That's what I would say. Give you perspective on what she is interpreting and
That's a
reading.
very good phrase, looking at perspective. I enjoy doing what I do, and we usually have a really good time in my readings. At least I try to make it that way for everyone. I do have a website. It's Sky Maiden Musings. And on the website, there's some free articles. There's a new one about the eclipses coming up in March of 2025. We have 2 eclipses this coming month of March. This is late February as we're recording this, Monette. And it looks as though March will be a real month of destiny for many people. The eclipse pattern is very active, and there's a free article about that. And I also included a sun sign reading. That's the 12 signs of the zodiac,
Right.
and how the eclipses will affect each birth sign. And that's free and newly posted on my website, Sky Maiden Musings. Sun sign readings are the basic astrology readings for Gemini, Cancer, whatever your birth sign might be. And they're the tip of the iceberg. They're based on the birth sign, the general birth sign, the Earth's path around the sun on your day of birth, the sign everybody knows. It's only a little portion of the chart, but it gives you somewhere to start. And it's also, where the birth sign columns that we see are published. Many astrologers criticize that, but I like to think it gives a bit of peace and comfort and a place to start with astrology. So if you want to experiment with that, there's a brand new column just about the really amazing month of March we have coming up in the world.
Wow, guys, we're going to be checking that out. That may be something I actually work through and make a separate video about the article Dikki Joe is just sharing with us from Sky Maiden Musings. Is that
Perfect.
correct?
That's it. Sky Maiden Musings. If you put that in
Listen,
or my
Dikki
name,
Joe,
it should
you
come
are
up.
so, pardon me?
It should come up if someone just searches that.
Absolutely. You're psychic. You picked a great time. You did. Look at the astrologer doing what the astrologer does. You are reading my questions ahead of me. The next question I had as you started talking about Sky Maiden Musings was, what role do you think that social media plays in astrology in the age of the internet and all of our websites and all the things? It's like, it's crazy. You've literally hit 3 of my questions before I could ask them. So tell me, how do you feel now that everyone can be an armchair astrologist, even though I would highly recommend that you go to someone that's a professional? What do you think about the ease of access to astrology? Do you think it's pop astrology? How do you feel about that?
Well, astrology lends itself very much to the internet. Astrology is ruled by the planet Uranus, and so is technology and all the marvels of the 21st century. So it's here with us, and I think it's part of evolving. It's good. It makes astrology accessible and accurate, mathematically accurate. It's negative in that it can dehumanize people and not be as personal. Most people want something personal to help them to feel individual power in dealing with being part of the mass group of people on the planet right now. And so the personal element's important, but the mass astrology, the technology is helpful in that it makes astrology accessible and familiar to so many.
Okay. Beautiful answer. So I have a site that I go to, Cafe Astrology, that I recommend clients to just get a chart, their initial chart, because there's so
Mhm.
much information. Is there any site besides obviously coming to you that you recommend or consider or have had clients tell you they've used?
I would think Cafe Astrology is good.
Excellent.
That would be good. I use the Solar Fire computer program to do the math in the charts now. I used to hand calculate them, but the computer programs have become so much more accurate than they were in the beginning. Back in the late 1970s and early 80s, when they first appeared, some of them were so off base, particularly with the moon. But I like one called Solar Fire that's based
Okay.
in Massachusetts, and it's not really expensive. It's very, very accessible. And of course, there are some free programs now where you can get a natal chart just free of charge by putting your birth data into their sites. So I think the one you suggested is a good one. It's
Yes, and
very
I do believe it is free as well. I think they have payment upgrades, but there is a basic free natal chart that is available
basic, yeah,
for the
that's
masses there.
available for people that just are on a budget and to see if astrology is for them before they make a larger investment.
Absolutely. Though I highly recommend the larger investment with Miss Dikkijomullen specifically. It's going to be the most accurate astrology reading you have received, and I can vouch for that personally. The reason I'm sitting here today is because of advice that Dikki gave me regarding my chart when she read for me. Specifically, you spoke to me about the yod, which is what I really was looking forward to talking about. I had some questions from some of the collective that I work with, and I wanted you to convey that. Now, I have a cursory idea and understanding of it because of you. And I studied a little bit to understand that it has to do with destiny points. The apex of the third planet matters as well. I'm going to have you explain this much better. So, guys, bear with me in my basic understanding. But it's about destiny and what you choose to integrate from what I understand. Please correct me and educate us on what exactly the YOD, the yod, is in a chart.
Okay, the yod is one of the several great aspect patterns. We have the grand cross, the grand trine, the T-square. The yod, I think that's the correct pronunciation in Hebrew, but it was spelled Y-O-D, you're right, is when there's a planet that is quincunx 150 degrees from two other planets which are sextile or 60 degrees apart. An example would be, say, if the sun would be at 6 degrees of Aries and the moon might be 6 degrees of Gemini. 6 degrees Aries to 6 degrees Gemini is exactly 60 degrees apart. Both the sun in Aries and the moon in Gemini would be 150 degrees from another planet that would be at 6 degrees Scorpio, say maybe Saturn. So Saturn would be quincunx, the sun and the moon, and those two placements, the luminaries, would be sextile. And the yod is a point of fate and karma. And then we'd look to see which of the 12 houses the yod is activating. There's 12 houses in the birth chart, and they all represent different areas of life.
Right.
One might be money, another one could be travel, another one might be residence, another health, and so forth. And each house has several meanings. Yod is not a particularly good aspect unless it's handled in the right way, but it shows where something is fated. Often it involves a health situation or the circumstances under which someone is born. And it can also represent different situations someone might encounter. Being in the right or wrong place at the right or wrong time can either make or break someone's entire life. And the yod is one of the aspect patterns that shows the need to be aware of that. On a more pleasant level, there are 4 elements in astrology: fire, earth, air, and water signs. They're 120 degrees apart. And when you have all of the fire, earth, air, or water signs, all 3 of them, within the right degree range, that can be a grand trine. There's 30 degrees in each sign. And if you have, say, the sun at 5 degrees Cancer, the planet Mars at 5 degrees of Pisces and Saturn at 5 degrees of Scorpio. You would have all three water signs, and that would be creating a grand trine, and that's
Right.
very favorable. So if your grand trine is in water, Cancer, Pisces, or Scorpio, you're very sensitive, imaginative, creative, empathetic. If the grand trine is in fire, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, it's dynamic. You might be a gifted athlete, have high energy, be very much a pioneer. If you want to be rich, find someone with a grand trine in Earth. Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. Those three signs accented can show financial security, stability, down to earth, tangible. And then the last element is air, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And someone who has planets in those three signs would have a grand trine in air. Very intellectual, very imaginative, very futuristic. So those are some others. The grand crosses are groups of cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs, and a T-square would be 3/4 of a grand cross. That's going a little beyond what we might want to touch on today, but that's what those who are studying astrology will want to go to next in order to learn more about their own horoscopes and those of others.
Well, a couple of things here. It's so interesting. I guess I was at the right place at the right time to have met you at that time in my life for you to even point out the odd. And I think you pointed out some other aspects, obviously, in my chart that helped me to take the wheel of my life in a certain direction because you made me aware. And this is why I really recommend getting a reading from an astrologer, because it was in my 20s when we were connecting and everything began regarding my career and the trajectory that I'm on currently at that moment. And having that understanding was life changing. Like you said, it can make or break someone's life. And I know there are other aspects and there are other things you mean by that, but that meeting for me was a pivotal moment. Even hearing the finger of God, even the curiosity of it all. And then I thought, okay, so I get to choose free will how this goes, and I don't just have to accept what's happening. And that's the power, I think, of astrology, because it empowered me to make decisions that kept me going in the right direction. Well, the direction I felt like I was led to intuitively anyway. So thank you, Dikki Jo. I appreciate that.
Well, you're very welcome. It warms my heart to think that I was able to help someone like you. You're a very special and talented person. And that's really what all of this is about. Is about bringing out the brightest and the best and making the path of life, which can be challenging, a little bit easier. So it's just, I'm very, very happy that the evening had that kind of effect so long ago and has had a positive aftershock effect because you're doing very well. You know, your life has changed a lot and going toward a lot of wonderful things. And it's
Thank you
just,
so.
it's very nice to think of having been a little part of it, maybe.
You were more than a little part. You were literally, it's like you turned the car in the right direction. And I didn't even realize it at the time how significant that would be to me. I just thought, oh, cool. I love all this psychic stuff and astrology. I'll get a reading. And like you said, when we met, we had the natural, familiar chemistry that you don't have with everybody. I just thought, I feel like I know her. I like her. It was easy. And as anybody can probably tell from this interview, it's still easy. I also want to thank you for helping me. This is a little quirky thing before we wrap up here in a few minutes, for helping me find lost items and keys for the last 20 years. We talked about the odd, I'm pronouncing it wrong, but it starts with Y. You also taught me this witch's trick, which I have used and taught other people. I don't know why it works or how it works. Yoni 101. Can you talk about that real quick? I will never forget you for that.
That's a channeled word. There's certain sacred words like abracadabra and so forth, hocus pocus, that have very long histories. Words are powerful, and it's Yano 101 if you want to find something lost, and it usually works, and you've been able to use it, right?
I have, even though I've been saying it wrong, I guess they honor the fact that my heart was in the right place.
Well, you
But
know what?
for
It knew the energies and the letters were there, and you may have been pronouncing it correctly all along or for you. But there's are certain words we can chant or say. If you think of a prayer, saying amen or saying a favorite Bible verse, it's the same idea. It's channeling words in that have a certain type. Let me see, there's one that helps with anything to do with health, Brimar 16. And
Remar 16. How many
Brimar,
times do you say that?
well, you say it a number of times that feels right. You not necessarily 16 times, but you say the number 16 because numerology ties in with this. And what we're really calling on, you'd have heard of people that have a lucky number. 7 is probably the most famous lucky number. 7 days of the week, 7 cardinal virtues, 7 archangels. You know, it's this, the number 7 is one that many people look at the 7 colors in the visible light spectrum, the rainbow light spectrum. It goes on and on. Well, the number 16 and Brimar is one to connect with health needs that we might want to address. And then there's also a group of numbers to send away negative spirits, and that's just 9 times 9. When I take groups out ghost hunting, the only thing that I insist that everybody learn is 9 times 9. You don't say 9 times 9 is 81. You don't go 999 9 times. You say it like this, 9 times 9. And that's important if you feel there is a negative entity or spirit around you.
Oh, wow.
Mostly the spirit world is friendly and cares about us, but every once in a while there might be an earthbound spirit that's negative or kind of clingy. And just knowing to say 9 times 9 helps to send that entity into the light. So that's another example of just a little thing that's very good to remember.
I'm going to close with a question here that has to do actually with the seance. Dikki Jo channeled my father. She didn't even know that my father had passed. She had no knowledge. She was sitting at a table, at that beautiful historical table of her grandmother's, with many, maybe 10 other people were there that evening. And my father came through, in the accuracy of which she channeled it. We don't have enough time to go into it here, but I'll share it in another video. What she did was she connected. And I wanted to know what that feels like for you when you're bringing through someone, like, because the accuracy is insane. You had no idea of it, that he was even not here on this earth. So it was so good. What does that feel like for you when you do you drop out of yourself when you're channeling, or what does that feel like for you?
It feels like being a giant telephone, Monette. I just feel the energy coming in, usually through the back of my head. And then sometimes the entity takes over my voice. And I've heard that even my appearance can change. I remember you, but I don't, when I'm doing a seance, I'm in a light daydream state, and I honestly don't recall it. You know, when you wake up from a dream, sometimes you remember the dream for a couple of minutes, and then generally it fades as the day goes along. That's what
Right.
it's like to be a trance medium. And I like to think that it brings comfort because, you know, your father, even though he had passed away, was still there. And he's with you. And he was just letting you know that you're not alone. And he's there watching over you and maybe comforting you, guiding you, happy that you're doing so well.
He really did. He came through you. He came through. I had another via the metaphysician circle. John, was it John something? He was a medium as well. And is it John Waters? Walker?
There was a John Springer. He's passed
Okay.
away, but I think you mean John Springer. He came over to that circle. He lives here in Orlando, or lived. He's passed away now. He and his wife Patricia would go over to our friend
Yeah.
Maria's circle. Patricia and he, a lovely couple. And he did do channeling. He worked a lot with the wee folk, the little people, the fairies, the
Yes.
leprechauns, the
Yes, he
pixies. That
did.
was kind of his branch of the metaphysical world. But I think you might be thinking of him because
Yes.
he was a very, very gifted in that field. He's very missed, but he's still working with us from the other side.
Absolutely. Even as you were talking just now, there was a light that flickered pretty intensely for no reason. And it felt very much like my father was saying, as you were speaking of my father, it happened. They can't see it, but I did. And I was like, oh my gosh. But yes, John brought through my father. And it's funny because he stood up, he said, I have to address you that something is coming through. And everyone else, this is so funny, Dikki Joe, was getting these messages that was like, your grandma cat is in heaven and she's with your favorite puppy and they're on a rainbow cloud. It was really lovely, beautiful stuff, right? And my dad came through and he honestly channeled my dad, and so did you. There was no fluff, there was no affect. He was like, he's in these suspenders and cement clothes. My dad built houses for a living. That was the business that he ran in the Keys. And so, and he was like, and he's telling you that he cursed. He said, what the blank are you doing? You need to get it together. You have people that you need to help. Like, he literally let me have it. And I said, yep, that's my dad. I did not get a fluffy message. There were no cats in heaven. It was like, get to work. And I'm watching you and you're wasting your talent. And it really, I was like, you guys are amazing. You guys really brought through my dad. So I'm so grateful for you being pure channels. So thank you to you and John, wherever he may be currently.
Well, he may be here, because you're right. When a light flickers, very often the spirit world will show us signs. Sometimes the snowy part of a television, before it tunes in, there's spirits that will come through there. And the flickering of lights off and on, they're different omens. The spirit world feeds on the electronic energy, the internet, and also other phenomena. They do show us signals. So you had a lovely hello from heaven just then.
Just then, and with you too. Dikki Joe, is there anything else before we go that you would like to share with the audience? Anything on your mind? Anything going on with our political climate that they should think about? I know that's a touchy subject, but I know astrologers weigh in on that as well.
Well, first of all, I'll thank you for the lovely interview and letting me be a guest on your nice program. As far as politics would go, all my friends are divided right down the middle, Monette. Yes, I have very strong feelings, but I'll just say, God bless America. Pray for our country and patriotism. It's a major turning point. The planet Mars, which rules war, is moving through Cancer right now, which is the sign of our country. July 4th, 1776. Right. Countries and places have horoscopes, not just people. And the horoscope of our nation is being very, very affected at the present time. And we all have to work with peace, healing, and harmony, and just sending a lot of blessings and positive affirmations toward our beautiful country. It has a horoscope too, and it's it does show that these are times of personal and planetary change. I would say everybody be flexible and observant, and be open to the idea of doing things in a different way or thinking differently sometimes, that may help. And be prepared for some surprises and changes. This time in history has been predicted by many great psychics, Nostradamus, even the Book of Revelations, Black Elk, Edgar Cayce, that this would be a major turning point, a lot of changes in the world. We have to hold on for the ride and do the best we can. I'm not an end of the worlder, but it's a very critical time, and it's filtering down into all of our personal lives. Live as well as we can and project a lot of very positive energies, thoughts, and feelings, and be careful about political arguments because
I know it's odd that I would
not.
ask. I wonder where that even came from, because I usually shy away, but I know that our country has a birthday. And so definitely what's going on, I know that you have your finger on the pulse of it in a way that many would not. So thank you for that really wise advice. For the people that are here that are watching on my channel, you guys know that we try to emanate goodness and wholesome energy and light and send out those prayers like Dikki Joe said. That is what we can do. You can't be in the mix of every argument at every family dinner, at every holiday. You can pray for our country, and you do that quietly without anyone knowing what your political affiliation is or how you come down on either side of it. So that was brilliant advice. Dikki Joe, I want to thank you so much for creating time in your, I know, busy schedule. You guys have heard it here from a world-renowned, brilliant astrologer and so much more. There's so many things that Dikki Joe does. Please check her out at at Sky Maiden Musings. I'm going to get it. And also, I will have all of her other information to connect with her as well below. Thank you so much, Dikki Jo. I appreciate you. I love you. I value the work you do. You changed my life. I'm so grateful for you.
Bless you, Monette, and thank you for everything. I know.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Bye, sweetie.